So good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Careers in Mathematics, collaboration with the Department of Mathematics and the UCLA Career Center. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm going to take a couple minutes to talk about Career Center resources. Again, my name is Roni Rufi and I'm Assistant Director at the Career Center. So I'm very excited to meet all our students in our panel and hope to work closely with our mathematics students, or, doesn't matter your major, feel free to come and visit us at the Career Center. Let me take a few minutes to go through some of our resources, and then I'm going to pass the mic to Zenith, who's going to introduce the panel, and we'll get started with the exciting part of our program this evening. All right. For those of you who are not familiar with the Career Center, just wanted to give you some information about our availability and how you can come and connect with us and talk to a career counselor. We are virtual and in person, so hybrid model for this quarter. We're most likely going to be hybrid model throughout the summer. We do offer 30-minute sessions through our database, which is called Handshake. Those are 30-minute appointments. You could post or you could request those either virtually or you could request those in person. Once you go into your Handshake account, it'll give you the availability for those 30-minute sessions. Unfortunately, those sessions get taken up extremely fast, really quickly. Just kind of be aware we post those every Friday and you can only see it up to 2 weeks in advance. So if you go on the calendar on Handshake and you see there's no appointments available to the end of the quarter, that's not the case. We just tend to post it 2 weeks in advance. So it's a good idea to just periodically check, because students do cancel those appointments and then those time slots pop back up again. We also do offer virtual and in-person drop-in sessions. They're Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 10 to 2. Those are 15-minute, really quick, drop-in sessions if you have questions about your resume, cover letter, job search, internship search. How do I use LinkedIn? How do I use Handshake? Where can I find opportunities? How can I network with alumni and professionals? Those sessions are great for those types of questions, be it myself, my colleagues, or our career peers who are students that we train to help you with those strategies. They're on there as well, virtually and in person at the Career Center. So those drop-in sessions are great if it's more quick questions. Events and workshops, on-campus jobs and internships, all of those opportunities are posted on Handshake. I'll talk about a little bit more about Handshake as we go through some of these slides. One of the other resources that we do help students with, which I didn't mention, is graduate school. So if any of you are thinking master's or PhD, we definitely advise with that as well, as far as personal statements and timelines and things like that. So if that's always an option for you or are interested in that, feel free to come visit us for those topics as well. So this is Handshake. You guys all should be familiar with Handshake. It's our one-stop, everything related to the Career Center. All our events are posted on Handshake. Appointments are posted on Handshake, our online resources as well. So definitely take advantage of it. Jobs and internships, that's where employers are posting those opportunities for UCLA students. We do have an amazing database called VMock. It's an online resume critique platform. It's really helpful, I think, especially for math students. It's a platform in which it allows you to, or teaches you how to write strong bullet points using action verbs and so on to make your resume look professional enough, and even help you get it through those tracking systems or resume tracking systems that a lot of companies are using to filter out resumes that students are sending in. So definitely take a look at VMock, take advantage of it, and then feel free to bring back your resume in a drop-in session to discuss it further with a staff member. I mentioned we have tons of online resources on Handshake, so this is just a handful of those resources. As you can see, VMock is there. Interview Stream is another one that a database that I really like, where it allows students to practice mock interviews. We do have a bank of questions in there based on different industries, and you could actually video record yourself. So nowadays, where interviews are Zoom and virtual and on video, it's a great opportunity to utilize so that you can practice how you sound and look on video. I've had students video record themselves answering questions and then brought it back into a session, and we've looked at it and looked through it together and practiced mock interviews. So that's definitely a great resource on there as well for you to utilize. For those of you who are graduating, I'd just like to bring it up to your attention that you have access to work with a career counselor up to 3 months after you graduate. So if you are graduating in June, you have access to work with us up to the end of September. Depending on the counselor, like with my students, I tend to, see them 1 or 2 more times after that, just to kind of close up the sessions and so on. But just be aware of that. You do have access to Handshake and anything and everything that's on Handshake, including workshops and career fairs, up to a year after those 3 months. So you do have that access, but unfortunately your access to see a career counselor ends after 3 months after you graduate. So keep that in mind. All right, quick review of our resources. If Zenith, would you like to start with the panel? I don't know if you would like for me to go ahead and leave this up here or kind of open it up and stop sharing my screen, totally up to you. Please let me know what you would prefer, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking about the Career Center. I hope, all the students who are present today, utilize it. I know that was really, I'm not a UCLA alumni, but it was definitely a resource I utilized during my time in UC Irvine. So yes, today we have 4 amazing panelists, all UCLA alumni from different, careers, and that's the whole point of this panel. And what we hope to introduce to all of you is just where can you go with whether you have a math background or if you're interested in going into any of these fields. Our goal is that you realize or you find curiosity and adventuring into different things and not feeling like you're restricted to one career path because of your major or because of your educational background, and that you can always find avenues or network to find different things. So I think I'm gonna just let the panelists briefly introduce themselves. Anyone can go first, like your name, your educational background, what did you major in during your time at UCLA, and any work or what you're doing right now.
I guess I can get started. Hello, everyone, and my name is Penny Zhang, and I am a class of 2020, and I studied mathematics and economics during my time at UCLA. So because I was a transfer student and I transferred right after pandemic, so I didn't really have a lot of chance to participate in a lot of activities. However, I did attend the Career and Ready Bootcamp, which was a great event that helped me to learn a lot of skills there. But yeah, with that, I will just hand it over to the next panelist.
I can go next. So hi all, thank you for being here today. My name is Juan Carvajal. My pronouns are he, him. I graduated from UCLA in the spring of 2020. I got my degree in applied mathematics, and I began taking PIC classes. That's the programming in computing classes that the math department offers at the beginning of my 3rd year. And that introduced me to software development. And shortly after that, I got an internship with a nonprofit where I was able to pick up a lot of web development skills, and that transitioned into a couple full-time roles after graduating. And just recently, I had sort of co-founded this startup that was about over a year ago. And right now I'm in a transition state looking for what can come next. But yeah, that's me, software development, applied mathematics, and I'll pass out.
Okay, I guess I can go next. I'm Daniel Gutierrez. My degree from UCLA was in mathematics, computer science. I graduated, worked in industry for a number of years, and I decided I missed academia. So I joined a PhD program. I was there for almost 3 years, and then I bailed to join a startup. So never got that conferred. But after that, I decided to become an independent consultant in data science because my graduate program was in computer science and applied statistics. So today that's called data science. And so that's what I do primarily as a independent consultant, but I wear other hats. I'm also editor-in-chief for a publication called Inside Big Data. So I keep a pulse on the industry. I really like doing that. And then I also teach data science classes through UCLA Extension. I've been doing that for several years, and I really enjoy that because I like giving back to people who don't know the field, who are strongly motivated to get into the field. So I'm currently doing that and really enjoying it.
I guess I'll go last. My name is Vic Thacker. I am a double Bruin. I've got probably the record for the longest degree, which is a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics Applied Science in Operations Research with a specialization in computing. And that was from 1988. And then I've also got an MBA from Anderson in 1992. I've got about 34 years of work experience, with about 25 years of that being in management consulting. And that's primarily in two firms. One is Deloitte, the big four accounting firm that everybody's probably heard of. And currently I'm at a company called Genpact, which is about a $5 billion company. We do some outsourcing and we do management consulting. And somewhere in between those, I'd actually started my own consulting firm for a while as well. So the question I always get asked is, what is a management consultant? It is like so vague. But what we fundamentally do is we work with businesses to help them succeed. So we work with a business executive to help them assess their company, identify problems, and implement solutions so that the company works smarter, not harder. And I joke around in my bio that I got started on this because I didn't like tart orange juice. And I was a summer job at an orange juice company. And I came up with a computer program to improve how they blended the orange juice, just so that I could drink sweeter orange juice.
Thank you all for your intros, and for the students, if you go onto the website, all their bios are available there as well. And we're going to move into, I guess, with the more specific questions, the one that you all are curious about. And for those who just joined us, you will definitely have an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. And we will also have breakout rooms for you to network with the panelists that you're interested in learning more about. So I ask again, anyone can get started, but what made you choose your specific degree? Like, as you're going through your time as an undergrad or even as a graduate student, what led you to that path? And how did, what steps did you take to get to the career you are in right now?
Right, I think I'm gonna go first again. Well, thank you for being so polite, the rest of the panelists. So I kind of have a very non-traditional educational background. So I'm originally from China, and I studied English literature when I was in China, and I worked as a teacher for a couple of years before I really made a move to here in the States. And the reason I really came here was to study economics because of the mentor I met who worked in the industry in China. So I started my education at Santa Monica College with economics major. But during my time there, as I was taking some mandatory math class, I met this wonderful professor who really got me interested in the math, and then he recommended the joint program here at UCLA, the mathematics and economics degree, and that's kind of how I really got into the specifically degree I picked eventually. Yep. So with that, is there another question that I am missing out?
Yeah. How did you get to the career you are in right now?
Okay. Yeah. As you might notice already, I only answered the first half of the question most of the time because I tend to get distracted. But anyway, so yeah, it was a very interesting story. During my undergrad, I did an internship with a local venture capital firm here in LA. And that was kind of my introduction to finance in general. I knew nothing back then about venture capital. light along, financial markets, but I was lucky enough to get an intro to work there. And after I interned there, I knew that I want to work in finance, but I didn't know which path do I want to go down. For a lot of economics major at UCLA, students are always contemplating on either going into management consulting or investment banking. I attempted that, but without any success. It was extremely difficult during pandemic and with the interview and with the study. But funny story, I now worked with the CFO of the UCLA endowment while I attended the UCLA Korean Ready Bootcamp. So I really have to give credit to the Korean staff here, which is why I land to my job today. So I met the CFO at the event, and then I kind of kept in touch with her, and then she kind of introduced me to the CIO at the UCLA investment company, who later paired me up with the director here. So I knew the people a year and a half before I really started to interview with the position. So the director or my mentor I paired with, she reached out last year and asked if I would be interested in working as an analyst here. So yeah, that's kind of long-winded way of answer your question, but just to conclude, I think it really comes down to the networking, and really comes down to really keep in touch with a mentor and people. Yeah, with that, I'm going to pass on to the next panelist.
I wanted to interrupt and say thank you, Penny, for promoting the Career Center and the importance of networking and our Career Ready Bootcamp program. It's an amazing program for those of you who are not graduating this year, where it's going to be hosted in January, and we definitely encourage everyone to apply. So thank you for doing that.
I'll go next here. So when I was at UCLA undergrad, I knew I was interested in going into business. I wasn't necessarily sure what was the best degree for it, because UCLA at the time, and I still believe, they don't have a business degree per se, or they have an economics degree. But I thought the economics degree was, it was good, but it was a little bit more abstract and not quantitative enough for me. So I stumbled upon math applied science, and they had just brought out this operations research specialization. And the beauty of it was there was math in it, but then you also took classes at Anderson. And so it was a great way to get a view of what an MBA program would be like, and take classes with actual graduate students in business studies. So that's how I wound up in the operations research program way back then. The way I wound up in management consulting was kind of interesting, and I'll give a plug to the Career Center. They had put on this event where employers were coming in, and they would do it at Ackerman Union, and you could go walk around and drop off your resume. And I would go tell my orange juice story to various companies that were hiring. And one of them was First Interstate Bank, and they liked the story, so they called me in for an interview, and I got a summer internship there. And eventually my first job was at First Interstate Bank. But while I was there, they actually hired a consulting firm to help them figure out how they could compete better with the other banks in the area. And since management consultants are expensive, I got assigned to their team to go work with them. And I had a great experience. I mean, they were like really smart. It was fun. I learned a huge amount. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. So I went, and they gave me some suggestions on what to do. So I went and got my MBA. And then went to work for Exxon for a little bit, and then got into a consulting firm at Deloitte. So that was kind of my circuitous route to getting into consulting.
I can go next. My story is actually a bit contrasting to the last ones. I came in thinking I wanted to do finance. I came into school there knowing I wanted to do finance, also knowing that I really liked math. But I didn't really know what to do. I think a lot of my story was me learning what I didn't want to do by just trying a ton of different things. And so I remember picking financial actuarial math as my major after my first year, and I felt really good about that. But then I took an accounting class, and I just realized this is never going to be for me. And that kind of turned me away from anything finance related, anything econ related. And that's when I got into applied math. I really liked it. And then as soon as I took my first PIC course in the fall of my third year, that's when I really saw coding as something I could do for my career and for a lifetime, really. And the way I got to where I am now was really through networking as well. I'm sure you'll hear a ton of that. But for me, it was a matter of beginning an internship with a nonprofit really close to my home. And it was a chance for me to share the little bit that I did get to learn through the formal structure that is the PIC classes. But I still was kind of out of my comfort zone there. They were having me do web development stuff I had never done. And I got to meet a ton of people who were more experienced, and I got to talk to them and work with them. And through that, I got to network with a ton of people actually doing the work, people in the position I'm in now, and just keeping in touch with those people. Once my work with that nonprofit finished, I was able to just reach out to a couple of people I had met. And, it was very quick for me to find my next role just within the people I had met. So yeah, I would say kind of the takeaways there are just making sure that you're networking, and not just, making sure people know your name, but going beyond that, making sure you check in with them quarterly, making sure that you have things to talk about, because the time will come where someone can be of help and you definitely want them there. And yeah, that's sort of my story into software engineering.
Okay, so as far as I go, my story goes, it was never a question like when I first came to UCLA that I would be a CS major, because I had been a computer guy for already a long time. I was like a little kid doing coding in middle school, and so when I got to UCLA and I had to choose a major, I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't a straight CS major at the time. It was only like, well, I had two choices: math, computer science, or engineering, computer science. And I was always good in math, so I said, well, I'll just go the math route. But I was always like sort of, disappointed I had to take all these math classes. That changed though, as I saw how necessary the math background was for my future profession in data science. So I came to UCLA and was a math CS major, and I mean when I came, I had just turned 17. I was a real young 17, and I had to like acclimate to a big university, and I was really feeling lost. So I found like-minded people at an organization at the time. It was called the UCLA Computer Club. And so it was great because there are all these people that were just like me, and everybody loved computers. And so they offered, and this is how I got my start in data, is they were offering like these free evening classes all around campus on various topics. And they asked me, they go, would you like to teach the database systems class? I go, well, I guess so. So I started teaching this class, and it turned out very well. And so all the way through my years at UCLA, I taught classes in the evening, database systems and programming languages and all sorts of things. So that's how I got my start with data. So when I graduated and came back, the way I sort of edged towards data science was when I entered my PhD program, I was looking for something more than just CS. So I thought, I like data. And so applied statistics would be a good sort of combination, not really anticipating years ahead that would be sort of the fundamental of data science. So I was really very fortunate that I made that academic path, because then it led me to a very strong position in my ultimate profession. So data science, I think that started to be used around 2010, I believe. And I was really glad that I could suddenly have a nice job title, other than telling people, well, I do computer science and applied statistics. Now I just say I'm a data scientist, and a lot of people sort of get it. And then you know, I have a title. So that's how I sort of came to be.
Thank you all. So one second. Okay. So, you know, all of you are in such different industries. So I'm curious. So like, what changes do you predict or foresee in the fields that you all are working in? Like, do you, you know, maybe they're expecting more, like something that the newer generation who are interested should be aware of? So like, you know, what, just anything that could be changing.
In the context of software, I think things are always changing. Just recently, GitHub, this major website that a lot of programmers use, they released their own version of autopilot, this thing that'll basically write code for you. So I think phrasing the question as to like, is my job in risk, or like what sort of jobs would be at risk? There's a lot more automation, I think, down the line for software and engineering. But there's also a lot of different segments, right? So I'm in kind of full stack, which means I get to work on the front end and back end. But in terms of where the future is, I know cloud computing is really on the rise, and that's kind of its own sector on its own. But there's a ton of different segments in the world of software. But yeah, that's definitely a trend that I see over the past months.
For my industry, probably one of the biggest changes that's coming on is similar disruption with like what Uber did with taxis, right? So typically, if you wanted a management consultant, you would go and hire from, you know, a smattering of firms, right? You've heard of them: McKinsey, Deloitte, Boston Consulting Group, PwC. You know, there's a few major ones out there, and that's what you would go do. But recently, there's been a real push on having platforms out there where former management consultants or other types of management consultants can actually connect with clients through a platform like Uber. And they will come in and do the type of projects that we would do at a much lower rate, and oftentimes with more specialized knowledge than the big firms would have. So that's a big piece of competition that's coming in against the consulting firms. And the way the consulting firms are responding to that is a significant investment in their people and in intellectual property. And what I mean by that is they've been coming up with research sources and with ways to train their people to make them much faster studies and more versatile in being able to drop them in more clients. So that's probably one of the big changes that's kind of coming in here, kind of like a gig economy towards consulting.
I will just go next. So I think it's a very interesting question, but I'll definitely say agree with Juan that, you know, especially in our industry, it's ever changing, market is ever changing, right? And the biggest part of the debate internally has definitely been the ESG and climate change and how we think about it and how we should incorporate it in our investment decision-making process. So just a little bit of context. So endowment, as you know, categorized as institutional investor, we have basically a perpetual investment horizon. So this is very different from, say, an insurance company who has to match their liability with their asset, whereas endowment, we are supposed to last forever to serve next generation of the students and the faculties. So what we're being really thoughtful of is really trying to think through the stakeholders that we have to consider. So our stakeholders are the students, are the faculties, you know, and the board members. So we've been really trying to gauge in a very complex macro environment like this, how do we think about, say, investing in oil and gas in different parts of region. You know, the energy market has been killing it lately if you ever follow the market, but you know, then there's a ESG consideration. So how to strike a balance between the investment return and our stakeholders, I guess, concerns, that's something that's really hard to gauge. But again, it's such an interesting industry that I can speak forever just in terms of how exciting I am to be here at work every day, just because the market is ever changing. And we love the change. We love the changes because we can never predict the future, but in our seat, we can have to make some sort of prediction because the investment we make today oftentimes lasts for a long period of time. So with that, I will just pass on to the next panelist.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very important question for my field in data science. I could talk an hour about changes in data science that are coming, but I can give you a short list of what's coming because this is a very rapidly evolving area of technology. So like one thing is that's very important and that's, you know, coming up quickly is interpretability or explainability for machine learning algorithms. I mean, people are getting the sense that, yeah, machine learning algorithms can operate rather accurately, but the question is, how are they making decisions? And for many industries, you know, like medical, legal, whatever, you have to have some justification for machine learning algorithms and why they're making the decisions they are. So, I mean, so this is a big area in my field, is developing technology to answer those questions. Next, something that Juan touched on is the whole big area of low code, no code. There's a lot of startup companies that are getting funded for producing technology to sort of remove the coding requirement for being a data scientist. I'm not convinced that that is, you know, really going to happen. I don't think I see a future for where data scientists aren't going to actually be writing code, but there's a lot of technology being developed for, you know, point and click, drag and drop, that kind of stuff to, you know, automate a lot of tasks so that you can sort of spread the talents of a data science team because of high demand in this field. There's so many open positions. So that's another area. Certainly cloud computing is huge in my area, and it's going to continue to be so. So I think any data scientist has to really have a foothold in, you know, using AWS or Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure. Just that's part of the skill set. And then finally is I would say accelerated computing and the use of GPUs, especially in the area of deep learning, is going to continue to be really, really hot right now. So I know a lot of companies that are in that space, and you know, they're attracting a lot of attention. So again, that's just an area that I think data scientists are going to have to engage in the near future.
Yeah, thank you all. So, you know, we're talking about all these changes and like, you know, predictions in a sense. So like, you know, in your present time, like what challenges are you facing that, whether it's related to what may happen in the future or just what's going on with like our society, our world, the industry, like, so just like, you know, these like daily challenges you may face within your position.
Well, I can go again.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go after you.
You know, the biggest concern that I have is that when I go into new clients and they say, "Oh, you're a data scientist, now work your magic," and I have to, you know, spend a lot of time convincing them that I don't engage in magic. I mean, a lot of project stakeholders, they know so little about what I do as a data scientist. They just really think that I you know, sort of wave my hands and things happen. So I have to like spend a lot of time educating people. So that's often what I'm having to do is work them through the data science process so that they have realistic expectations at the very end. And sometimes, by the way, when they call me in to get an initial assessment, I find out that their business goals for the project are totally unreasonable. I mean, they have an idea of what machine learning can do, for example, and then when I sort of tell them what it can really do, they say, oh, well, and then I have to also ask, hey, do you have data to support your requirements for a machine learning project? And often they don't have the data. So I have to sort of hold their hands in describing how to get the data, how to procure the data sets from a lot of different sources, and maybe the project will go. So that's the biggest deal that I see. So
my daily challenges are a bit different. So I am a member of partnerships and alliances for my company. So what I do is I basically work with other consulting firms, and we go together to propose a solution to a client. So I might have, our firm Genpact, I might have another one or two firms. And so the trick is in this, there are two big things. One is, how do you make three firms with three disparate cultures, three disparate interests, work together and operate as one team and look like one organization in front of the client on one end. The second end is everybody has their own interests. So how do I get those interests aligned and then get those codified in some type of contract so that everybody knows what's to be expected out of this engagement from my partners, and that everybody is, at least satisfied with the piece of the pie that they're getting, and that we're not instilling some type of conflict of interest amongst ourselves. So, my challenges are not technical. My challenges are very much dealing with organizations, dealing with personalities, and trying to get people aligned.
That's a great question. Well, I think for people in my industry, there are a lot of challenges, but I would say the biggest challenge is just really to keep up with the market, given, the financial markets are really innovative. So, crypto has become a very popular asset class, but, I haven't looked into crypto myself for a long time. And I would say, it's quite hard for me to wrap my head around about a lot of use cases for crypto and the DeFi, but there are people very bullish, and of course there's a lot of money to be made in that asset class. But it's just to really narrow the knowledge gap and keep up with the market has been the greatest challenge, just for me personally, but also for our organization. But because another greater challenge would be, because we have such a global portfolio, we have exposure all over the world, China, Brazil, Europe, just to think everything in connection with the global context has been really challenged, especially under the current market circumstances. So well, we really want to have a diversified portfolio, but also diversification can be very costly. So one thing we are experiencing right now is S&P 500 have been outperforming for all these years, whereas emerging market had a phenomenal return for one period of time, and then it kind of lost everything. The one country I'm thinking about is just China. So I think it's very challenging for us to really think through our portfolio construction. How much do we want in certain asset classes, and and also what geographical exposure we really want to get into. So but again, what makes it challenging also makes it exciting as well.
I would say for me, there's a lot of places where you can write software. I've gotten the chance to work in the startup environment, which is a bit more different than, you know, a fully built out Fortune 500 company or something like that. And I find that the biggest challenge specifically with startup environments is you can end up wearing a lot of hats, and there's a bit more uncertainty as to, you know, where things can go or what your role can become, which can be a good and a bad thing. I think in the past, it's offered me a lot of chances to grow and a lot of chances to do things that I wouldn't have done if I had gotten a job at a really big place. So that's definitely a challenge I've had with my past roles in sort of startup environments. I think in general, working in software, something I personally find challenging is trying to keep up with kind of trends and where things are going. In the classes I took, they taught us C++, which is a great language to get started with, but nobody's really hiring you to write C++ unless you go and look for those jobs. So when I was beginning to get ready to graduate, I really had to get a grasp on, well, what are the really popular things that people use? How can I get good at them? How can I get good at picking up new languages as I go? And getting into the habit of always learning and always being a student, because I think that's what software requires. And those are two of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. So we have about 15 minutes left of the panel portion, but I wanted to give students a chance to maybe ask a question or two. You can either drop it in the box or even, you know, unmute your mic if you're comfortable. If not, I do have one or two more questions before we go into our breakout room. So if anyone is interested in asking a question, this is your chance right now.
My question is for Juan, if nobody else wants to go.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So since you're a recent graduate, and I see myself probably having a similar career path to you, I haven't really like gotten as much into the code. I kind of focused on like diversifying the kind of math that I can do. But I do want to start getting into that software aspect. So I'm just curious what languages you recommend that I start learning, because I have experience in C++ and some Java, but nothing like deeply developed.
I would say if I can go back, one of the best things I could have done was start on side projects a lot sooner. So I would say a good place to start is think about what it is you want to work on. If that's a website, you can start looking at JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. That's all the front end stuff. And I guess this can just bring on a lot more questions as to what you want to do. So I would suggest first, you know, figure out if you want to work on front end code, back end code. If you want to work closer to systems, that's a lot more C and Java. But for web development, full stack web development, definitely JavaScript. Look into a good framework, whether that's React or what was the other? React's the most popular. I'm blanking out on this other one, but also like database languages, Mongo or Rails is a pretty old one, but it's pretty quick to pick up. Sorry, that's Ruby on Rails. But yeah, just get really good at JavaScript if you're gonna get into web development. But if you figure you want to do something different and you have questions about what those languages can be, you can also just reach out to me then.
All right, thank you.
Great question, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. So we have two questions in the chat right now. I'm going to go in order. So sorry if I butcher your last name. So Jordan Fuchs, I'm so sorry. If we don't have a lot of experience with coding or data and are interested in these fields, do you have any recommendations for steps we could take to help gain our own experience and stand out when looking for internships? I assume this is for people like Juan and Daniel when they're looking for experience and anything like that.
Yeah, I get asked that all the time by my students. And what I recommend is to get some project experience by visiting the Kaggle website. That's like sort of king in my field, where you can participate on projects. They're actually challenges or competitions. You don't have to be real serious about the competing part, but the learning part, I think, is good. And plus, they have a few tutorial projects, like everybody does the Titanic project. There's a lot of solutions that you could review and learn a lot from looking at the code. So in my world, like the programming languages are either R or Python. Some people use Julia, which is like a newer programming language for data science. But the important thing is to at least get your feet wet and start, the thing about Kaggle projects is they're very well defined. So you know exactly what the solution has to look like. They give you the data set, and you have at it and see how well you do on the leaderboard and so forth. So that's the first step in my mind, because they're real life projects. They're actually sponsored by real companies, real organizations, and they really want to see solutions for these projects, because they'll put them in production, hopefully. And it's also good resume material, good stuff to hang off your GitHub site. So that's my recommendation.
Daniel, can you repeat the website and maybe drop it in the chat box for a student?
Oh, yeah, it's let me just do that.
And while you do that, there's a question for everyone, for all the panelists. Is any advice for graduating seniors still trying to figure out their post-grad plans?
Before that, I'd just like to add really quickly for the software aspect. There are a couple different facets when you're applying to jobs in software. You're going to get a technical interview most likely, and that isn't really looking at projects. They're not going to ask you to build out an entire website, but what they will give you is questions on data structures and algorithms. And so if you want to practice that stuff, you can go on LeetCode. There are a ton of different websites like it, but LeetCode is probably by far the most popular. That's where you can go and practice different type of interview questions. And as far as public projects that you can work on, I know GitHub also hosts hackathons pretty often. It'll be like a weekend where there's a project that a ton of people are going to work on. You can see what people submit at the end and participate in that as well. But yeah, that was what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Juan. So yeah, and then just to repeat the question, someone asked is if there's any advice for graduating seniors still figuring out their post-grad plans, and this is open to all the panelists to answer.
Yeah, I guess I can just chime in here because I was in the same boat not too long ago. I graduated the end of 2020 in the deep of pandemic, and I did have plans, but none of them worked out. So I guess it was a little bit different. So I knew back then that I really wanted to work in finance, but I didn't know and which direction I really want to go. So what I did was really apply massively for any finance related job. So what it did for me was it really forced me to work on my resume and really work on my cover letter and really tailor that to the job description. I think it was really helpful to a skill. It was very helpful skill that can be carried over when you have more clarity in terms of what you want to do in the future. But yeah, I would just say, work on your resume, cover letter. And another thing I did, and which I really enjoyed, was just to send a cold email on LinkedIn. I am a big fan of networking, and I really love talking to people in a different field and just to hear what's their experience like and what they really like and dislike about the industry or the positions that they work in. And you'll be surprised that most of people are really helpful and they're very willing to talk to you. I think that experience really provide a lot of insights and courage, especially during that very challenging labor market. But yeah, so right now I think this labor market is more friendly to our undergraduate. But yeah, that would be my suggestions.
add on to that, I echo your sentiments. I mean, we have an old saying, network or not work, right? So I would definitely take your time to go out and network with individuals, because there's all types of interesting things that they can tell you, right? You know, their career paths and all that type of thing. But like, I used to run the recruiting for Deloitte for University of Texas at Austin. So I could tell you, how do consulting firms like recruit people? What do they look for? What's the games you have to play? How do the interviews work? All those types of things, right? So go out there, network with people, see if they have the, you know, if they have career paths and the types of things that they do interest you. And you can probably pick their brains on the best way to get into whatever career path you're interested in. And as Penny said, people are oftentimes much more willing to help than people realize. And especially if they see an earnestness in you, that you are genuinely interested, and they will help you. You know, I've rarely come across people who haven't helped me, but you have to show that earnestness.
Yeah, I can go next. I think that my recommendation, at least for people that, you know, graduating seniors who are trying to get into data science, is to be prepared for the interview process, because in my field, interviews can be brutal. And the reason is because data science is like a confluence of so many different disciplines. So you might have the interviewer being really mathematically oriented. So they'll ask you some mathematics oriented questions, or maybe statistics questions, probability theory. And then there's computer science stuff that can be thrown in. So there's a lot of lists on the internet that are, you know, interview questions, and you know, do your best with that, because those can be very overwhelming and scary, and you know, don't worry about that. Just do your best in preparation. But the other thing I can say is that in preparation for your resume, is in data science, it's very important to have a link to your GitHub site on your resume, because I've seen people who get hired not because of what's on their resume. The interviewer will just go straight to the GitHub site and they'll look at the content and say, wow, this person's great based on all this stuff I see, you know, their code, their projects, and so forth. So you shouldn't minimize the importance of that aspect. And that means you have to sort of gear up. You have to start working on your GitHub site, you know, months or years in advance, just to make it such a clear winner when you go to apply for a job. But that's important in my field.
Yeah, I think I am pretty much on the same page with everything that was said. Something I'd add is, at least personally, I know I probably could have benefited from taking more time to think about what I wanted to get out of a job in software. Whether that be like what type of people I wanted to work with, what type of environment I wanted to be in, because I found myself in the position where I knew I wanted to work in software, but I didn't know exactly the size of the company. I didn't know what type of people I wanted to be with. I didn't know what my day-to-day, what I wanted my day-to-day to look like. And so I think that kind of set me up to apply maybe less, or be more accepting of like the first things that came to my door. And if I had taken more time to kind of think about what I want from these roles, how will these roles fulfill me, I think that could have been more beneficial. But everything that was said, I think was really strong points.
Thank you all for sharing. Are there any more students who would like to ask a question real quick, or? All right, if not, then we can move into the breakout room portion of tonight. So Ronnie, you wanted to separate everyone into their breakout rooms?
Of course. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Zenith, did you want to also talk about your department a little bit?
Yes.
Before we
yeah,
stop the
really
recording?
briefly. Yeah, really briefly. I'm just going to go into the department. So 1 second. Okay. All right. Can everyone see my screen yet? Okay. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All So just a little bit about the math department, and I know a lot of the students who registered are math, undergraduate students. I'm not sure if there's any graduate students in this call, but there is virtual advising, and our student services office is open from 5 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. So if you want to talk directly with the math faculty, that is something new that we introduced, kind of like, I guess a plus side of the pandemic is having like professors available more readily through Zoom sessions that are guaranteed, or like they're listed on the website, where they're right here under undergraduate programs. So you can see what hours they're available. The Zoom link will be there. So if you have any questions, you are welcome to join the virtual advising. And we also have math merchandise for sale, as always. If you're interested in purchasing one, you can go to the website and go to the merchandise order form. Our sweatshirts and hoodies are very popular right now, and we are only taking cash and check at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you so much. At this point, Zenith and I would really like to thank our panelists for being here this evening. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording. Again, thank you so much for your time and commitment and helping our Bruins learn about different career paths and options, and the importance of taking advantage of all the resources that are here at the Career Center. So thank you so much for being here.